ourselves a lot that we single-handedly helped during the pandemic. We literally connected everyone to their families, and we connected so many of education and healthcare sector to be able to get care and education on time. We gave all of these licenses for free. We helped connect the world. That was our priority when the pandemic hit. But it's also interesting to know why we started this company. Why was this company even started? So our CEO, if you guys know the famous story, he used to belong as a founding engineer of WebEx. And at that point in time, WebEx was a tool that was used for internal video communications. Because at that point in time, what mattered was having video communications within the company. We did not think that we would have so many people commuting and taking calls or living in their house and having a remote situation, and hence would not have access to a desktop client. That's where Eric thought this would be a need in the future. So when he started the company, the focus was all about having video communication seamlessly available on a mobile app. And for that, it's all about having great infrastructure, having really great video quality and video engineers who are able to hack that. So that's kind of where our company started. So we started with speedy innovation on mobile platform. This is where we are now. We have more than 20 products. I'm sure most of you have not even heard of these products if you don't use Zoom at your company. But that is what we are moving towards. We have about 20 different products. We have nearly 8 products on customer service. So it's all about contact centers and having large-scale events and sessions and webinar powered through Zoom's technology, and hence having it completely seamless. We also have a lot of employee engagement products that we have launched, which is more about in-office rooms and things like that, which are powered, again, with Zoom's superior video technology. And then comes our core products, which is all about meetings and so on and so forth. And why I bring all this history into play is this is what makes our project very unique, because I've been in the same data science salon. This is my 5th or 6th time speaking here. But in all my previous companies, I have worked in B2C kind of problems, which is mostly in like retail and really using retail users' data. And hence, there's an abundance of data. And then also the ability to use this data at scale and build all these large-scale machine learning problems. What is very unique about Zoom is we started as a B2B company, primarily serving enterprises. And then we slowly moved to the B2C side when the pandemic hit us. So now we are a B2B plus a B2C company, making our problems even more unique to solve. Today, our focus is going to be on the B2B side. And before that, maybe I could do a small introduction about my team. So my team leads all of product intelligence at Zoom. We have about 40 members in my team, split across data engineering, data science, and data analytics. And we get all the product data, which is basically all of this product logs in terabytes, and bring them together and make insights out of them, all the way from analysis to machine learning. And when we think about it, in today's session, we're just going to talk about B2B business, and specifically, Mirella, who's one of my tech lead, is going to cover on the prediction of churn using product usage data. So the uniqueness of B2B business from data to targeting is this. So when it comes to B2C business or e-commerce business, it's typically a very defined flow. Users come and they shop around and they kind of buy the product. B2B is very unique. It starts with pre-sales and alignment, and sometimes can take even months or years to convert these customers. And also their churn is also that unpredictable. When pandemic slowed down and people started coming into office, we all know we are facing an economic downturn right now. So the decision to not use Zoom is completely based on economic situations. It might not be based on whether our product is providing the service they need. It could be based on 1,000 other factors that influence whether they want to stick with us or they want to consolidate all their video conferencing solutions. So that makes our problem really tricky. And we have all of these multiple steps in which a customer could churn. At this point in time, we are primarily going to focus the entire presentation on optimize and renew, which is we already have a customer, they have been with us, and now we need to predict whether they have a propensity to churn out of Zoom completely. So that would be the focus for today. With that, I'll pass it to Mirella.
Hello. Awesome. Yeah. So thank you, Dhivya, for that. Hi, everyone. My name is Mirella. And I'm going to talk about how we solve this problem with data. So once upon a time, our customer success team faced this daunting challenge. They had a large amount of customers to reach out to, but no insights on who they should prioritize first. So what we had is we were able to arm them with data and provide them insights on, are they using all of the products that they're paying for? Are they maybe unaware of some of the offerings that we have? Or are they potentially looking at some of our competitors? With data, we were able to just take this. So with data, we were able to create a roadmap for them and take this list of customers that they maybe did not know who to reach out to and turn it into who prioritized list based on the likelihood of churn. And this made sure that we were targeting the customers that were most likely to churn, increasing the efficiency of our resources, focusing our efforts where they really mattered most. And this seems, sort of like a pretty simple problem, but when we think about it, we had over millions of customers, and our customer success team was only around 200 agents. So it really becomes difficult for this to be a manual task. They really need data in order to take that giant list and turn it into something like this. But what I want to talk about is this isn't just where we stopped. This is where we started. We took this prioritized list and we turned it into a full-fledged data product. And what do I mean when I say data product? And what does it mean to productize your ML solution? So when we think about traditional ML and we compare that to a data product, traditional ML really focuses on the first part of just analyzing those customers that are at risk. You provide an output, you hand it off to some team, and you don't really know what happens after that. But a data product, it takes that output and it makes sure that you focus on what happens after that. What is the user experience? How are they going to interact with that product? And to create a data product, it's not just a data science task. There are other experts at play. So I'll go over a little bit about how our team structure looked. First, we had a data product manager. This data product manager was in charge of the consumption layer. It was, okay, we've built this solution, now what happens? How are we going to integrate this within the workflow of our customers or of our customer success team? A lot of the times, we've seen projects can fall flat because it adds unnecessary steps. It's more cumbersome to use, so they might not want to use our solutions. The next part is also a data analyst or a UI expert that really focuses on the user experience and makes sure that it's an intuitive app or intuitive solution to use and that it's visually appealing. And then lastly, we have our data scientist who build a lot of the models and also work closely with the customer success team to make sure that the model output makes sense and it's what they're looking for. I really want to say, one of the reasons why we were able to move so quickly and why this process was so seamless is because we really focus on the design thinking methodology. So in the beginning, this was such an open-ended question. There were so many different directions we could take it, many different solutions we could build, but really design thinking ensures that you focus on empathy. Empathy of your end users, which in our case was the customer success team. So focusing on empathy, it really allowed us to immerse ourselves into their different pain points. What did their workflow look like? And that really structured the roadmap that we followed for this process. We did a lot of planning, we implemented a lot of different solutions, we did testing, we evaluated, and we went through the circle so many different times. Throughout this presentation, I'll sort of walk through what was our initial approach, what did that look like, and how did we iterate along the way to make sure that the solution we were building was something that the team was going to find value in, was something that they were going to use. So let's talk about the initial approach. The initial approach was a very simple rules-based model in which we took 3 of the products. Dhivya had showed, the 20-plus products that we had, but we narrowed it down to 3 products that were really representative of all the cohorts we have at Zoom. We looked at usage trends over time, and we created some rules on top of that to categorize users into high, medium, and low risk. It was really crucial, this step, to first get business buy-in, and going to them and having an output and showing them that, this is where we can begin, but there's so many different places we can go. So creating this very simple model allowed us to start these conversations with the customer success team. It got them excited about the potential of this project. And it also gave them data that they didn't previously have access to. They didn't know whether some of their customers, had dropped in usage over time, whether they had increased. They didn't have that information. And then on our side, it was really useful to establish this as a baseline for our model. When we, then later created a machine learning model, we were able to see, what does it mean to be good? Like, are these model metrics that we're seeing good? We were able to use this as a baseline to know that this is how much more we need to improve in order for this to be a solution that's worthwhile pursuing. And then the second part of it was thinking, now that we have this rules-based model, how are they going to access this information? So at first, what we did is we put it into a dashboard where they were able to have other data that they didn't have access to, like account dimensions, the risk levels, which were the high, medium, and low risk labels, and then also different usage and adoption metrics that they previously didn't have access to. In addition to this, we also added weekly email notifications. So we wanted to make it an experience where they didn't have to go into our dashboard and sift through tons and tons of data to find the information that was relevant to them. So what we did in these weekly notification emails, only if they had an account that was newly at risk did they get an email notification. This really changed the feeling of like, it's just spamming or I have to sift through a lot of data to when they got an email, they knew that it was probably something they needed to action upon. Within this dashboard, we also added row-level security to ensure that only those customer success managers who were assigned to an account were able to see this data. That was helpful in not sharing data with maybe someone who shouldn't see it. And then also, when they log into this dashboard, they only see information that's relevant to them. And again, they don't have to spend extra time sifting through more data. And I really want to point out that another thing that made this project so successful is that we were able to reuse a lot of the components that we built. So in this example, we had built a DBT model that we used to power our dashboard. And this model, we used this exact same model, no modifications, nothing, to be able to create these weekly email alerts. That was really helpful in allowing us to move really fast because we didn't have to spend time rebuilding a lot of the things for different use cases. And when we showed our email template to the team, they wanted to add additional data. And guess what? This model already had that data. So any additional things they wanted, it was already in that singular location. Now we go to our third approach. So at this point in time, we have a heuristic or a rules-based model. We have a consumption aspect that they know where to access it. They know when they should access it, when they get those weekly email alerts. But now it was time for us to start thinking about how can we replace the back-end model from a simple rules-based model to a machine learning model? So what we did here is we built a classification, built an XGBoost model that instead of looking at one dimension, which was product usage, we expanded it to hundreds and hundreds of features that focus on many different aspects of a business. As Dhivya mentioned, an enterprise has a lot of macro factors, has a lot of usage, has a lot of different things that can affect it. So we really got to explore a lot of different features. And I'll go through some of those in the next couple slides. But another big thing that we added at this point in time was an explainability component. So now they would not only know, who was at risk, but why were they at risk, and what should they do with that information. And I'll go through that framework as well. So the first part, if you're using a supervised learning technique is, okay, what are my labels going to be? And I think this is a little small to see, so I'll walk through them. But churn sounds like a very simple problem. They churned or they did not churn. But that's actually not true. There are many different scenarios that can happen. If we look at the top left corner, we see a first scenario. We can have an account that enters, in an observation period with around $10,000, but they exit that period with $9,500. that means they had a 5% reduction. Does that mean that they churned? Does it not mean that they churned? Or we can look at scenario number 2. They enter with $10,000, but they exit with $5,000. Now that's a 50% reduction. Is that churned? Is that not churned? Or we can have a third scenario in which they enter with $10,000, but exit with nothing. That one, I think we can all agree that means that they churned. But for this model, what should we consider as churn? What label do we create? Because when we did a lot of analysis on these, we found that all of them have very different behaviors, which makes sense, right? If you only downsell by 5% of your licenses, you're probably going to behave very differently than someone who completely leaves the company. So we had to sort of figure out where we wanted to go with this. We did a lot of analysis to see how many accounts we would cover depending on which scenario we used. And for the first iteration, we went with a binary classification. We went with the middle solution, which was a complete cancel versus a continued subscription. So if they started with an amount and then had $0 that they completely left, that's what we focus on for our ML model. And then the next part of this was, now we have our labels, but how do we create our features? What time frame do we choose to create these features? So to choose that time frame, it was a combination of performing a lot of model experiments to see, which one got us the best performance, but also looping in the business on this one. We first sat down with the customer success team to understand how much time do they need in order to be able to talk to these customers, right? I could probably make an amazing model that predicts an account is going to churn in the next week compared to something in the next year, because I have so much more information at this point in time. So it was really about understanding how much time do they need in order for them to be able to reach out to a customer. So they said they needed around 1 quarter to be able to reach out to the customer. So we thought, okay, we need at least 3 months in advance to give them that heads up. And then the next part was choosing at what point do we choose to cut off that date? 3 months from what? Like, when do you start creating your features? So what we did is we performed some analysis, and we found out that a majority of the customers tend to churn during their renewal date. If you're familiar with the subscription business, right? You start a contract in February, you have an annual subscription, you end it in February of next year. Well, your renewal date would be in February of next year. So what we did is we chose that renewal date, and we looked at, that was what we took as a time frame, 3 months before that renewal date. And we also found that a lot of accounts, churned within plus or minus 2 weeks. So it's not that they churn on their renewal date, but it could be potentially like 2 weeks before they realized that they didn't want it, or maybe 2 weeks after they realized that it got renewed, and so they canceled their subscription. So that's what led us to this 4-month time period in which we gave them a quarter and then also added some buffer time to account for a lot of those scenarios we were seeing. And I'll talk about model features at a very high level. These are just some examples, but I do want to say, we explored hundreds of features, and we really started this by sitting down and hypothesizing, like, what are the different reasons, or talking to the customer success team on, like, what have you heard in the conversations with your customers, and how can we create features for that based off of the data that we have. Tenure, I think, is a pretty, typical example in churn prediction modeling. You hypothesize that if your customer has been with you for a longer period of time, then they're more loyal to your company and they will probably not churn. Also being on the product intelligence team, product usage data, seeing different products and looking at the monthly active users over time, seeing how that changed, and then also comparing that to, well, what if, one of the products is going down really low, like if they're dropping a lot and they're using another competitor product. So we also had competitor data to be able to see, are they using a competitive product and they're maybe not using our product as much anymore. And then also looking at things like product mix. For example, if they had purchased product A, B, and C, but they were not using product B and C, well, maybe they're not they're going to realize that they're not using all of the products that they're purchasing, right? So maybe they have a higher likelihood of churn. So we explored, tons of different features across so many different domains, not just product usage, to create this model. And then our explainability framework. So now, so what? We tell them, hey, this account is at risk. So what do they do with that information? So what we found out is that the customer success team, prior to this model, had their own risk process in which they had these predefined categories that they would go to. So instead of us providing them new categories, we tried to fit our model output to these categories that they were already used to. So these are just different categories that they used in their risk identification process, but then we were able to take it a step further with data. We were able to tell them which product exactly is exhibiting, this sort of behavior, and also how large is the issue, quantifying, what are the raw values, what does that change look like over time for this issue, and then also providing them benchmarking on, does this look normal compared to other cohorts that are similar to your customer? And all of this was then included in our dashboard, and it was summarized into a very easily interpretable sort of like paragraph or language, right? To where they could just have a talk track ready to talk to their customers. They didn't have to sift through all of that data, and it was just summarized for them on their dashboard. Then the last part I want to talk about is, okay, now they have all this information, they know why their customer is at risk, but what can they do about it? The current process was getting the email notification, going to our dashboard, then going to their own platform to identify this risk. They had a risk process. So what we did is, what if we make our dashboard a one-stop shop? So what we did is we created an API connection directly within our dashboard that went to their customer success platform, and all they had to do was click a button, and then all of the risk process got entered for them. This was also really great because we were able to collect a lot of that metadata. I think one of the very difficult parts about ML is, how do you know that it's because of my model that we saved this money? Well, with this, we were able to collect data on who submitted this risk, how much money was that account worth, and we were able to actually add a dollar amount to our machine learning model. And this is sort of how the app looked on the dashboard. It had the different account name, whether they agreed with the risk, and the different risk reasons. And again, if they clicked yes, then we could have attributed that to the risk coming from our model. But then if they hit no, then we were able to see why are we getting these false positives, right? And it was a sort of feedback loop for our model. This is the framework for the actionability app that we created. What I really want to call out is our dashboard was in Tableau, but we added an Okta authentication layer, so we knew that when they submitted that at risk, it was actually them who was submitting it. And then also it going back to Snowflake so we could collect the metadata and be able to do analysis on our success metrics. So measuring success. Going back to the concept of machine learning versus a data product, in the machine learning aspect, we of course looked at very typical machine learning metrics like precision and recall in our F1 score. We translated that to more business-friendly metrics like leads per CSM, which was essentially our precision, and percentage of risk captured, which was our recall. And then of course from our actionability amount, the dollar amount that was recorded. Very important success metrics, right? This was, are we actually doing a good job? Like, is our model doing good at actually identifying risk? But then also from a data product perspective, it was about looking at, how many emails did we spend and how many of those actually converted to them going to the dashboard, or how many people were actually using our actionability app. And then also providing support. We had chat channels and everything, but I think I'm at time now. So yeah, I just want to say thank you.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, so considering the B2B nature of your product, I imagine that you frequently have a situation where the key decision maker that is making the procurement decision on whether to continue using some certain set of Zoom products and the actual users of the products may differ significantly. So I wonder to which degree you're considering in your retention strategy insights, that disparity, and which insights do you think are most useful to dig into that aspect?
Considered that a lot. So what we did is we segmented each of our model results afterwards based on the industry segments, such as SMBs or enterprise or OEEs, which is our online customer base, and so on. And that showed us like a lot of difference in the output. And so what we started doing is building multiple machine learning models for each of these segments and then combining the results together. And also what really varied is not the decision-making power, but also how much money are they spending with us. So if they're spending more than $10,000, it's a big decision for them to quit per month. There's someone who's spending like $2,000. So these were the primary two factors which made a split, actually. So it's a great question.
Okay.